and our topic today is simple acceptance. Ernest Holmes, in How to Use the Science of Mind, page 56, wrote, "All the words, thoughts, affirmations, and denials, the declarations and realizations in a spiritual mind treatment are for the purpose of bringing the consciousness of the practitioner, the one speaking the treatment, to a higher level of spiritual acceptance." So let us remind ourselves that the creative power of spirit is moving through us as we speak this truth. I am a willing guardian and steward of the one eternal light of spirit. Therefore, my prayers are declarations of spiritual truth that set me free, lead to greater happiness and fulfillment, and help to create a world that works for everyone.
So this entire month has been devoted to spiritual mind treatment. And for those of you who are new, that's a word that we use for something called affirmative prayer. And it is a form of prayer that brings our minds and our hearts, our entire being, to a place of acceptance of spiritual reality, of the idea that everything is of the one source, of the one presence and power. And what I love is that not only is this the teaching of great mystics over all time and in all different religions and spiritual traditions, but now science is catching up with it and beginning to see this idea of oneness, the idea that everything arises from one infinite, universal, invisible source, and that presence by nature is inherently orderly, intelligent, that there are laws of creation, that our thoughts are creative. And so as we begin to tune into this truth, and as we begin to become aware of the oneness of life, and that we are purveyors or distributors of creation, we are participants in creation, then the way that we pray changes a little bit. Instead of talking to an outside God, we instead declare the truth. Our prayers are declarations of spiritual truth that remind us, that bring us to the point of spiritual acceptance, the acceptance that all the good that we could ever desire is right here where we are. So back to Emma Curtis Hopkins, I love to just continue to bring this up, is that there is good for us, and we ought to have it. There's good for, so say that with me. There is good for us, and we ought to have it. Yes, this is a universe of bounty. There's more than enough. Just the song that we just sang, there's more than enough for all of us. And so as we tune into these higher spiritual awarenesses, we accept that as our truth and as the truth of all of life, we do begin to create a world that works for everyone because our hearts are open. We realize that everyone around us is us. We're all brothers and sisters of the Most High. That warms my heart every time I remind myself of that. So that's what spiritual mind treatment then is. It reminds us of these higher truths and brings us to that place of acceptance. So that's called spiritual acceptance. So I want to talk about the different ways that acceptance shows up because it's such a powerful word. The good is already there. It's just for us to accept, and we accept it through our thoughts. That's the way we embrace the truth. It starts there because our thoughts then generate our feelings and generate our behaviors or our actions. So the world of cause, is in our thoughts. And so being aware of that spiritual truth, we walk through life more graciously. I was reading the Science of Mind magazine this morning, and I was so inspired by what Reverend David Alt shared about thoughts. So I want to share this with you. It's wonderful. Anybody read it this morning? Okay, Marcy did. So you're going to recognize this, Marcy. so so anyway, what he said is that thoughts are like cars. So we have all these cars parked in our parking lot, the parking lot of our subconscious mind, right? And so whatever happens in our lives depends on which cars that we fuel, hop into, and drive around. So if there's a thought of, I can't do it, and we pay attention to that thought, we get in the car and we fuel it and we drive down the road, or if it's a complaint or if it's a judgment or whatever it might be, then we find ourselves in a traffic jam. We're in a kind of a locked position, a traffic jam with a whole bunch of other cars where we can't, it's almost like a parking lot. Anybody ever been in a kind of a parking lot traffic jam? Okay. So that's what happens when we allow our thoughts to focus on things that we don't like. And we get stuck in that parking lot, and then there's a tendency to blame others. So all the people that are in that parking lot are blaming each other for being stuck. And meanwhile, all it was it's what we fueled. It was a thought that we fueled that became manifest in our lives. Well, we can also fuel thoughts of I can do it. We can focus on what's good, what we desire, the infinite possibilities of life. We can practice forgiveness. So when we hop into those kinds of cars, we put our fuel there. And the fuel actually is not only our attention, but our emotion, our enthusiasm. When we have a lot of enthusiasm for new ideas, enthusiasm for the people around us, and connecting with them, then what happens is we get in the car, we start driving, and wow, it's like the whole world opens up. The freeways are wide open, the country roads are wide open, and we arrive at our destiny. And there may be a little few switchbacks on the way because life is kind of like that, but because our destination is sure and our mind is focused, we arrive at our destination. Don't you love that? Yeah, so thoughts are like cars. Okay, so acceptance then is part of spiritual acceptance is accepting the creative nature of our thoughts. Knowing that we are these divine beings who create our reality. So then, once we get to the point of spiritual acceptance, that our thoughts are creative, that we are of the divine, that we have unlimited possibilities from which to choose, and it all begins in formation in our minds. And as we meditate and as we do our spiritual mind treatment or affirmative prayer, that we continue to expand our consciousness and be able to receive and accept more and more good in our lives. Then the next level of acceptance is accepting what is. Accepting what is. Byron Katie wrote a book called Loving What Is. It's the same thing. It's learning to understand that everything that we and all of the rest of humanity have thought up to this point in time is what's made manifest. Right? Because thoughts are creative. We've all participated in and also the creation of the divine itself that kind of sets the stage for us to participate in creation. So when we accept, well, that's what is, that's what we've created up to this point, then we can kind of relax and not get into resistance. Because when we're in resistance, what happens when we're in resistance? All kinds of turmoil in the mind and in the emotions. And we get into that traffic jam in which things are not moving. We're feeling stuck in a situation that we don't like. So that's what resistance creates. So when we love what is, when we accept what is, then we we move into a state of peace and relaxation. When we are peaceful and relaxed, what happens? Our minds open to solution, to possibilities. That's why our spiritual practice of meditation is so important, because it's practicing being in that beautiful state of peace and openness to possibility. And then as we begin to practice, during that time, and we start learning to be mindful as we move throughout our day, being in the present moment, being aware of our thoughts so that we can pivot at any moment, not give any more fuel to those cars, those thoughts that aren't serving us, and we start fueling the ones that we want to, we continue to arrive over and over again at the destination. Now, many of you might think, okay, the destination is going to look like a certain thing, but I am going to propose to you that the destination really has to do with consciousness, because once we have a certain state of consciousness, then all else is added. The great master Jesus told us, seek first the kingdom and all else is added. Well, what is the kingdom? The kingdom is a state of consciousness, of oneness, of acceptance, of the possibility of good, acceptance of our good right here and right now, acceptance of the new ideas that keep pouring through our minds that inspire us, and that we can feel that sense of this is mine to do in the world. This is mine to give. It's that state of mind in which we feel great love for ourselves, for each other, for life itself, peace beyond all understanding, joy. And it's also the kingdom of heaven consciousness is a willingness to accept what is in the moment so that we can move forward. We can let it inspire us with new ideas. Because contrast, things that we don't like, if we use them properly, are give birth to new desires, to new possibilities. And so, again, when we fuel those possibilities, then we can drive off in the direction of that destination. Okay, so loving what is. Um, Acceptance what is. And so the final type of acceptance. Oh, I want to share with you a couple of quotes that I think are so awesome that speak to this thing called accepting what is. Wayne Dyer. How many of you love the work of Wayne Dyer? Yes. He said, enlightenment is the quiet acceptance of what is. The quiet acceptance of what is. Now, that doesn't mean that we're passive and we lay down and we don't do anything about it. It just means, again, okay, this is what's been created so far. So, what's the new thing? What's the new idea that I'm going to plant in the soil of universal mind in response to this? It's about responding instead of reacting. Eckhart Tolle says, when you live in complete acceptance of what is, that is the end of all drama in your life. How about that one? And then Arthur Rubinstein said, there is no formula for success except an unconditional acceptance of life and what it brings. Okay, again, this is living in a state of, okay, this is what's been created so far. What, loving, embracing it and saying, okay, what am I being called to create from this moment forward? So it's about responding instead of reacting. So the final kind of acceptance is simple acceptance, which is our title, and it has to do with a high state of faith and trust in the goodness of the universe and the universal law and knowledge and understanding of the creativity of our thoughts, but also the power of the universe to respond and produce what we focus on. So Ernest Holmes writes, Jesus likened the kingdom of heaven. Remember, we talked about the kingdom of heaven is within. It's a state of mind of high spiritual acceptance and love and peace, all of that good. He said, so Jesus likened the kingdom of heaven to a child, for a child expects his or her parents to meet his or her needs. It is the nature of the creative mind to respond to us, to give us what we put our attention on, what we think about, and what we talk about. Our practice then is to let go of the mental images we dislike and place our attention upon those which are more nearly after our heart's desire. Well, this simple acceptance of life and what it offers, this faith in the good, was so beautifully demonstrated to me on our trip to India. We were visiting the Dharavi slum in Mumbai as part of our tour. And I can't even describe to you the impact that that had on me and still does when I think about it. And yet, out in the empty lot that we walked through were children. Children playing soccer, finding sticks or rocks or whatever they had to create their play, full of joy, full of laughter in the present moment, making play and making joy out of the life that they're given. So and then coming up to us visitors and giving us high fives. That's the faith and the trust of a child. That's the kingdom of heaven consciousness, no matter what your circumstances or surroundings are. That was so dramatic to me and had such an impact. I can't even begin to tell you. And then, in addition to that, our guide and many of the guides that they use that take you through the slums are from there. And they are working, they're earning money, working their way toward uh, a college education. This particular one that we had was headed to college and was so excited to tell us about the possibilities of his life, and that he worked hard in school, and he was going to be attending college, and he was through this being a guide, he was able to support himself in that process. Again, kingdom of heaven consciousness in the midst of what could discourage someone. And yet, these young people were full of the possibility of life. They were open and they had faith in the goodness of life to provide them. And they had learned to direct their thoughts. I mean, I think it's kind of natural for a child to look for the good. And so, what I'm inviting all of you to do, if you don't already do this, some of you kind of do this naturally, I have to say, many of us do. It's a reminder to have that simple acceptance of the good, have that simple faith of a child, that kingdom of heaven consciousness, that all is good, that all is good. So again, spiritual mind treatment cultivates that kind of consciousness. Do we still have copies of the spiritual mind treatment handouts, Tom? Do you know? Okay, if there are, does anybody not have a copy of how to do, it's a one-page copy of how to do a spiritual mind treatment? Okay, so if maybe Tom could get those, what I want to do is take you through what it is, and then you'll have a handout so you can practice it on your own at home. It begins like this. It begins with God is all there is, or Spirit is all there is, whatever word you want to use for the all that is. One source, one presence, one power. And that life is my life. And so as I begin to tell myself the truth, what happens is the idea is to move myself into a state of awe and wonder, to lift myself into a state of high gratitude. So you want to raise your hands again? It looks like Tom has some for you. I'll send one to you.
Okay.
Okay? Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay, good. Lovely. And again, so we start with the all that is, the most expansive idea that we can have of the all that is presence, all love, all peace, all joy, all possibility, all potentiality, that universal mind that is everywhere in its fullness and right here where I am. That's the unification step, is the next one. And so I have access to the universal mind itself, all the possibilities, all of the ideas right here, right now. So all of the good that I could ever desire is within me. And I give birth to it through acceptance of the ideas that flow through me. And then you move into realization, which is so now that I have this kingdom of heaven consciousness, this consciousness of oneness and all possibility and all potentiality, I live my life from that place. I begin to not only see possibilities and think possibilities, but my actions reflect that. My thoughts, my words, my emotions are all moving me in the direction of and in the destination of good and more good, not only for myself, but everyone around me. I am here to be the presence of love, to serve and to assure that I am part of co-creating a world that works for everyone. Do you see how that begins to work? And then, so that's realization. That's why I put words. It's like a mental picture. We call it a mental equivalent of that life. But again, we want to develop the consciousness of it. So we want to talk about what it is to live in kingdom of heaven consciousness. And so then after that comes thanksgiving. We accept that spiritual truth, that spiritual reality by saying, I feel so grateful for that. I give thanks that this is already happening because the moment that I conceive an idea, it's already a thing. It's already coagulating and coming together in the infinite invisible and then showing up in our world and showing up in my experience. So I give thanks for that. I give thanks for the kingdom of heaven consciousness in me. I give thanks for the manifestation of this word. And then finally, I release. I release this word to a universal law that has this amazing ability. It's invisible, but somehow brings my thoughts, my words, my actions into manifestation. Wow. So I end with a great sense of awe and wonder and gratitude and joy and exuberance. And so I can breathe, I can relax, I can let go, and I can trust that universal law to do its work in my life. So, how good is that? So, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to invite our practitioners to surround the room, and we're going to end with a what we call a prayer shower or chamber of prayer. And so we're going to be focusing on prayer for ourselves, prayer for our spiritual community, prayers for our planet. Okay? Mm-hmm. Right now, right here, right now. And the rest of you, you can either sit, you can open your arms, you can, if you want to stand and receive, whatever you want to do. I invite you to do that now. So again, you're accepting. It's being in a place of acceptance. You ready? Okay. There is only one life. That life is God. That life is perfect. That life is my life right here and right now. That is the life of every single person in this room. That is the life of everyone on this planet. And so I begin by knowing that right here, right now, the kingdom of heaven consciousness is not only being birthed, but it's being made manifest in every single person here, myself and all beings in this room, all beings in our spiritual community, all beings on the planet. I know that my words are seeds of creation taking place right here and right now. So I plant a big vision, a very big vision that we are co creating here today not only the kingdom of heaven consciousness, but a world that works for everyone, a world in which love prevails, peace prevails, harmony prevails, a world in which abundance in all of its magnificence that appears on this planet is distributed in a way that supports everybody, in the expression of their gifts and talents, uh, knowing that together all of humanity is co creating now, here now, an amazing experience of heaven on earth. It's not something in the future, but it's here now, heaven on earth. I am so grateful for the fulfillment of this word. I'm so grateful for this kingdom of heaven consciousness that's anchored here now in each and every person in this room. I give thanks for life itself. And I release this word with great joy and great conviction into the universal law of mind, knowing that all is good, all is well, and so it is. Stay together. And